Hatep Yassar, and welcome to another new Outformation class. Anuki Merseltet, Atuntet, Maretet, Nafartet, Sintet, Atumre, and I am a student teacher of the master teacher, Pa Manzal Nizdar Amun Nebabre Ah Pata Zetwi, Hu Kawan Harar. He is free. And of course, at the start of this new Outformation class, we want to focus on the fact that the master teacher is innocent and will be exonerated of all the false charges against him. In this day and time, Pa Manzal Nizdar is the only being who can guide us safely during this day and time. So it is imperative that we do not get complacent as we receive the new Outformation, because without the freedom of Pa Manzal Nizdar, we will not be able to subsist through this day and time. So, of course, we will remind the family to keep up all work on avenues for his freedom, support those who are working on behalf of the master teacher and his freedom with your love, remembering that love and unity is the key to his freedom. Time is very imperative that we free the master teacher at this time, and the Outformation that we get every week just underscores this fact. Not only for our survival, but for our love for him as our father and our friend and our guide. We owe him nothing less. So please keep up with your chants at 9, 3, and 9, those hours of power. Continue with the love and unity. Continue with the work on the master teacher's behalf. Continue mastering our language, Nuwaupu'i, so we have the proper tones that we need in this day and time. And of course, continue to not only ingest or intake our genetic doctrine, but apply it as well. All these things are pertinent in this day and time, and we have to continue to remind ourselves to keep the main thing, Pa Manzal Nizdar. So for this evening's class, we have an update of Outformation, and we're going to finish the Outformation regarding the harvest of the Canaanite world. The first updated piece of information has to do with what most do not know. Pa Manzal Nizdar, Amun Nebabre Akhpata Zetwi, greets us as Pakaradu, the children, his children. He is the father. And as Nuwapu, we are the children. He speaks about how much is going on worldwide in these days, and the fact that the planet is really being controlled by extraterrestrials. Most people don't even realize this fact because they are so blinded by religion and the beings that have been at war for thousands of years. From the Anunnaki, the Dingir of Enki, and the Igigi of Enlil, these are the same beings that became the Seraphim or the Sepharu of the Torah, and the Karabu or the Cherubim, and they were overseen by the Anakim or the Elohim or Alihat. Both sides seek to rule Taha, or the earth, and all of its resources, including its livestock, which they view as animal or human. And many other extraterrestrials came in and joined with the conflict. As Pa Manzal Nizdar, Amun Nebabre Akhpata Zetwi, Hu Kawan Harar, has continually emphasized to us, many beings, most beings on this earth, earthlings, Mutalu, are under a spell of hypnotic sleep. Beings of the earth were given amnesia, and they worship the very beings that actually use them as slaves and see them as food. They use them as hunters and armies in order to procure their blood-red flesh meat cravings. So it's so many of them, they don't even know who to serve or why. So the beings of the earth who are under this hypnotic spell of sleep live by faith, hopes, wishes, and they say that their God or gods are unseen. But it's becoming clear the mass deception that is going on. But because of fear, most people cling on to their false religions. And they always become rivals out of clinging their false religion, as spoken of in the argument, Patarak, brought to us by our Supreme Grand Council of 24 Elders. So from the two brothers, Enki and Enlil, and the rivals Anu and Alalu, onto the Dingir and the Igigi, a third group is always created, known as the Ushamgal. So it became Cain and Abel, and you have also down throughout time the Habaru or the Hebrews and the Jawa'u or the Jews, and they became the Sephardim and Ashkenazim. and the third Reformed, which would be the Zionists. With the Kasasu, the Christians, you have the Gnostic and the Catholic, and the third party being the Protestants. With Muslamu, the Muslims, you have the Sunni and the Shiites, and then the third party would be the Hashashin. And from each, you have many sects and groups and denominations and clans. All of these groups claim the same unseen beings as supreme beings. All of these religions claim that they have the one true deity, who in time will kill all the other deities. This is how the planet is being ruled in this day and time. And Hamanu, or humans of all races, are slaves to these extraterrestrials who use them to fight, war, and kill, and give them weapons of destruction. Some of these beings whisper into the minds of humanoids to get them to create cults and gangs and armies and the police force. Law enforcement. Law enforcement is given the power to abuse, to enslave, and to kill anyone who violates the law, which we know to be Leviathan or Lawi Tenan. Dracos, draconian laws. In Gad, they trust. Yet they don't even know that Baal is Baal-Gad, or Enlil and his son is Nanar, or Sin, Zuin, El Shaddai. Any of them can be Yahweh, or Jah, or Adonai, or El of Elohim, Allah of Alihat, or the Theos of Theoi, God of gods, Lord of lords, King of kings, which means kin of their kinsmen. And now again, they are killing humans worldwide and world over by hate and war. They call it politics. Phonetically, you hear Apollo from Helios, Apollo, the son of Zeus and Leto. This is their religion. They serve by Anunnaki and they don't even realize it because they operate off of blind faith. All these religions are told that they're right. All of them can die, kill, war, and fight to rule the planet. So now we're in the hereafter. We're past the 2000 AD mark. The 6,000 years ended in 2000 AD, and they have been deserted by their overlords, and they are self-destructing world over in the name of Gad. So you ask, what can we do? As Pamanzal Nesdar, Amunababre Akpata Zetwi, Hu Kawen Harar has told us for years, get out of the way. Stay out of their way. They keep our race close to them as a shield of protection. Any group that teaches the African here in the Western Hemisphere to, stay here, stay with them. Let's set up our own area in America, such as what the Nation of Islam has advocated or what the Moorish Americans advocate to stay here in North America. They let them speak as much as they want. But then when you have those who say, let's go back to Africa, like the Honorable Marcus Garvey or Kwame Nkrumah, who was bringing our people back home to Africa, they kill or imprison them so that they can keep our race close to them. Why? Because the rulers of this universe are our Salafu, our ancestors, Panataru, and they will remove them all. But now that Africans or Panagaru, Negroids, are mixed in with them by living so close, they don't wish to destroy you, their own children. So the Anunnaki know this, and Pakamahu, the Pleiadians, also know this. So they put it in the minds of the Kakasu, who don't even really realize why they won't allow us to return home to our home, Afafreika, Africa. So every time they hear a Nagaru or a Negroid say or teach, let's go, something in the mind of Pakakasu always says, call them a cult or lock up their leader, but don't let Panagaru get away from us. Or Panataru will destroy us all and start over. Pamanzal Nesdar expressed that he hopes that we overstand now what we see going around us all. Most people don't even have a clue what is going on all around them. They need us, Panagaru, the Africans, in the religions of Abraham or Ibru He tells us not to accept what they're saying about UFOs, that it's nuts and it's crazy. They say that it's crazy, but at the same time, they spend billions of dollars trying to watch the sky or get to the moon or get to Mars. What would be the point of that if nothing is out there? They say heaven is up there. Well, we're going up there, but, heaven is up there. And God and Christ came down from up there. But at the same time, they're saying that God and Jesus can come up from there, but they can't accept that other beings came down to Taha, to earth from somewhere above. He reiterated the point about deception in religion. So let's look at the politician or religious teachers. Religious teachers, preachers, politicians, they all campaign for followers. They campaign for followers to trust them to believe in unseen powers or sufferings all the same. They repeat the same things over and over when they teach or preach, nothing new. It's the same old stories, the Bible or the Quran or politics world over. There's no real answers as to why. Just believe. And it's sad because it makes people zombies or robots, just the blind leading the blind. And if you do know the truth, they will imprison you to shut you up. But thankfully, we are blessed to receive Wu Nuap, our own spiritual science, from our master teacher, Pa Manzal Nasdar Amun Nababre Akhwata Zetwi Hu Kawan Harar. And it is breaking the spell fast. There's nothing they can do to stop it. He said it's too late. The hereafter doctrine is now here, and people will wake up and watch as Pa Mudau, or the evil ones, are removed from the planet. They seek weapons of mass destruction to destroy us all and wipe us out. Their overlords actually gave them these weapons in the 1940s to wipe us all out, destroy us all. And they actually put ideas in the minds of the Germans who worked with the extraterrestrials under Hitler. And then they came to the US once Hitler and some of his men were taken up. The ones left behind came to New Babylon, the USA, and they built weapons such as the atomic bomb and more with the plan to destroy the entire planet. And since 2000 AD, they've been back at it with these massive, destructive weapons. Killing, warring, fighting religious wars, as their overlords left them here to self-destruct. But their spirits are trapped. Their ghost orbs of white balls of light will get destroyed too, and they're confused and they don't know what else to do. Pa Manzal Nasdar Amunabare Akhwata Zetwi Hu Kawan Harar also explained how they offer up the flesh and blood to plead to their gods to return. So now they're using the weather weapons, such as the HARP Project, to kill millions each month. And over the years, in classes we've spoken of how many of the major disasters were actually triggered by the HARP project, which sends out waves, high-powered waves, to cause natural disasters. So they use the weather and weapons, the HARP project, to kill millions each month in order to offer up to Pakarabu, or the cherubim, their blood offerings, their sacrifices, to ask their god, or Gad, Nanar, Sin, Zuin, Zion, to return to them and to smell the sweet savor of burning flesh, which you hear in the Bible all the time about the savor of the flesh, killing millions of people in wars and floods and earthquakes and tornadoes and storms. So Pa Manzal Nasdar is speaking about how much is going on around us. And it's sad, again, because most people don't even know. Among Pakakasu, the poor whites, they even offer their own. They offer up the poor whites to their gods because they don't care. It's a sad but true reality. And as always, Pa Manzal Nasdar says, don't believe me, check it all out. So with that, we're going to continue with the information regarding the harvest of the Canaanite world. in the first part of the affirmation that we shared, it spoke about how the deities and gods of the monotheistic religions and other religions, Jah, Yahweh, Elohim, Alihat, these are all actually names that are hiding the true identities of bloodthirsty extraterrestrials who are coming to have the harvest on the world. Harvest for the world is spoken of in the Bible. There was a deal made between the Pleiadians and the Draconians for the Pleiadians to supply the Draconians with flesh because the Pleiadians were being eaten by the Draconians. And they have used the planet Earth through the monotheistic religions as a way to cull up the meat in order to appease these bloodthirsty gods and save themselves, being the Pleiadians. So we're just going to continue with that affirmation. Now, there's been a vortex opening every 10 years since 1943. And a process started in 1940 where scientists were attempting to open a vortex. However, they did not have a computer large enough to accomplish this, so they actually built one, and it was finished by 1943. And it took 3 years. And with 1943, you had extraterrestrials, or the gods of these religions, coming down to return. In 1947 AD, there was a crash known as the Roswell incident. And actually, it didn't actually happen in Roswell. It happened a few miles outside of Roswell in an area called Corona, New Mexico. So July 2nd, 1947, a saucer crashed. And this was the first crash site. And there were 3 graves that were found, and they were secreted away to an area called Area 51. Now, at that time, there was a ranch hand named Mac Brazel who actually discovered the crash. And the crash was 3/4 miles long and 250 miles wide, meaning the coverage of the impact of the craft and the debris. So when he found the remnants of the crash, he actually approached the sheriff's office and showed them the remains of the flying disc. And this was on July 6th of this year. So the sheriff thought the military base, the local military base, would be interested in this, and he presented the findings to them. And the crash actually happened in 2 parts. So there was an area with debris, and there was an area with the actual cabin, and these 2 areas were actually 60 miles apart from each other. When the authorities came, in order to mask what had happened, they said that what happened was a weather balloon crashed. And they actually denied the fact that there were any alien bodies there, even though at that time there's records of inquiries and calls being made about dry ice, procuring dry ice, because that's what's used to preserve bodies. And lots of dry ice was actually bought from stores at the time to preserve these bodies of these aliens that were found. Now, of course, by the end of the investigation, Mr. Brazel's story had changed. However, to the day he died, he insisted that he did see a flying saucer. So from that day, there was a lot of activity going on from the base after the crash discovery. There were actually trips made to Roswell and 4 other bases. And each of these trips was transporting debris from the crashing of this craft. July 6th, there was a trip to Fort Worth, Texas, then Washington, D.C., then there was a flight to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, then to Los Alamos, Texas on July 8th, and July 9th, there was a trip from Washington, D.C. to Roswell, and then another trip made from Roswell to Fort Worth, Texas, which is a lot of activity for a craft that had no bodies or the crashing of a weather balloon. So from this one incident, you can tell how they've been trying to keep the existence of extraterrestrials a secret in order to keep the masses under control. Because if it became publicly known or publicized by, let's say, the government, who most people view as the source of reliable information, or the media, if they were to put forth there were extraterrestrials, which they know exist, there would be massive chaos. So they're trying to keep control, because the masses of people on this planet don't have a clue about anything that's going on this planet. And if something does happen in real life, they make a movie about it so that people think it's not real. Or they preemptively make a movie about it so that when it happens, people won't even have the concept in their mind that something like that could really happen. And by the time it happens, it's too late, lulled in the spell of sleep. So that there are people who may actually have an extraterrestrial encounter in sleep. But because they saw it in a movie, they're thinking, oh, I'm just thinking about the movie. It's not really real. So it's all about control, because the concept of religion and a God that will save you and protect you from the devil would be null and void with the introduction of extraterrestrials. That's a factor that does not appear in any of the books of the Bible. God is not conceived of as an extraterrestrial, even though he comes from heaven down to earth. But that would destroy that concept. And that religious concept keeps their flock in line. Remember, churches are called a flock for a reason. So, when the issue of extraterrestrials gets raised with those of a religious community or religious mindset, it will bring up some questions. Even in giving the information we're giving, someone would say, well, that means that there's a being that can come down here, take you from earth, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. Yes. Their God, their Jesus, is not going to save them from an extraterrestrial coming here in the harvest for the world and taking them. In fact, their God and Jesus is actually seasoning and preparing the meat to be harvested by these bloodthirsty gods. So there's nothing that can be done to avoid being harvested if you have surrendered yourself to these gods. There's nothing you can do to stop it, and this is inclusive upon the Garu. When you look at the harvest for the world in the Bible as the listing of the 144,000, you see the presence of the tribe of Judah, which we've learned is a Negroid tribe. So you ask, could Negroids be harvested in the harvest of the world? If they have fallen under the ways of Pakakasu, yes. If their vibration has changed to the point that their own ancestors, Pasalafu, Panataru, cannot recognize them, yes. So it's very important to not just see being dark meat or being African as your sole sense of protection. If you are vibrationally eating what they eat, wearing what they wear, thinking how they think, absorbing their music, absorbing their way of life, seasoning your body with cigarettes and alcohol, you are just as ripe for the picking as any Kakasu. However, if you come under the way of Wunuwap, showing reverence to your ancestors, Pasalafu, Panataru, that is where the protection comes in. So the question is to be raised, what would happen if millions of people became aware of the extraterrestrial presence on this planet? You would have mass hysteria. And there's actually a book that addresses this called UFOs, Generals, Pilots, and Government Officials Go on the Record, and it's written by Leslie Kean. And it describes how the revelation of this kind of information would cause mass hysteria, a loss of order, chaos, and a lack of governmental control, because the people would demand, well, why weren't we told this? Why don't we know this? What are you doing about this? But at the same time that the masses are being kept ignorant, those in higher places are making plans in order to avert them being harvested in the harvest for the world. They're making plans and they're making deals so they can stay off the menu of the gods. Because they have the understanding that God is an extraterrestrial being as described in the monotheistic religions. And when you break down extraterrestrial, of course, you'd have extra, something outside, terra meaning the earth, and astral of the stars. So again, the flesh-eating beings have returned, and they've begun abducting Canaanites who were bred for the last 2,000 years from the point of Jesus or Jah-Zus or Jah-Zizus or Jah-Zuin. He is also known as Shezmu or Shazum or Zurvan, the father of Ahriman and Ormans in Persia or Chaldea. He had to offer sacrifices for 1,000 years. Now, Palmanzal Nisdar also spoke to us about Amhe. And if you look in the Comprehensive Dictionary of the Gods by Anne Baumgartner, you will see entries for Amhe. Then this is an Egyptian flesh-eating deity. So this flesh-eating deity is actually the fake Jesus. So for 2,000 years, people followed the fake Christ, who also became known as Isa in the Muslim religion of Al-Islam. Palmanzal Nisdar explained to us how Islamism is nothing but Gnostic Christianity. It's a Gnostic Egyptian Coptic sect from the Ethiopian church. And this is where they got most of their rituals, their rites, their style of dress, their tongue, their dialect known as Arabic, from the language of the Arabs from a land that became known as Arabia. So they were Christians first. And you can actually read this in Acts 2:11. Arabs were actually there in the day of Pentecost when the Israelites got possessed by the fire gods and spoke in cloven tongues like as of fire. And this is the same as Al-Shaddai, who the Muslims call Ash-Shadid and the Hebrews call Ha-Shad. This is the God or Elohim of fire. And you can find this deity in Exodus 3:14 and Exodus 15:11. So if you ask, who are these Elohim or Yahweh or Rephim or Cherubim? They're killers, spoken of in Exodus 19:1-14, Exodus 19:8-16, a fire Yahweh. And also read Luke 10:18. Then if you look in Exodus 19:18, you see that these Yahweh descended upon it in fire, and the Draconians did not want the Israelites to see what they looked like or gaze on, as in Exodus 19:21. And this can be found in Hebrew Strong's number 7200 as Ra'ah, to see with the human eye. Also see Hebrew Strong's number 7210. And the same word in Arabic is Re, to see. These beings are cherubim, spoken of in Exodus 25:18-22. Also known as their Lord, who said to kill people in Exodus 32 and Numbers 11:1.
People, earn more with high-yield free checking at Capital One Bank. Earn 5 times the national average and free ATMs anywhere. Go online or stop by a Capital One Bank. What's in your wallet? Somebody help me down.
Come visit us right here at your local Capital One Bank.
3. And this same Lord Yahweh also chose females of them for sex. And that's spoken of in Numbers 31:35. So this fire god, or the god of light, of Patat, Tat, the heavens, and Taha, earth, asked for blood offerings, sacrifices, killings, cookings of flesh on altars, rituals, and rites, and even holidays to kill for them. And the word in Hebrew is Rab, the same in Arabic as Rab, meaning Lord, Master, and Sustainer. And in Sumerian, for the Anunnaki or Anakim, En means Master or Lord, as in Enlil, Master of the Sky, as Lil is actually Ilah, La, or short for Allah. So Enlil actually means Lord God, and in Islamism, in their Quran, now chapter 18, originally chapter 15, you see in verse 2 of chapter 108, it says to Muhammad himself. Muhammad, who is known as the Arabian prophet or the founder of Islam in the year 610, who died in 632 AD, born in 570 AD, is being told to kill or slaughter for his Lord God Allah or Rab, just like the Israelites. This is because they worship these same gods, the cherubim. The Allah or Rab is actually the same as the Anunnaki, the Anakim, who sends down his Milkan or Molech, known as Malaikat or the angels. In the Quran, in the Islamic religion, they ask the Muslims to kill animals, draw blood. They have feasts and festivals where they have to slaughter animals, burning flesh in open fire, all in the name of their Allah or God and his angels known as the Malaikat. The holiday Eid al-Adha, the Feast of the Sacrifice, entails thousands and thousands of animals actually being killed for their Allah or Rab. So, and the way that they actually kill the animals, it's like a bloodletting. It's blood running down off the animals, running in the street, because they actually slice the animal at the carotid artery, and that's in the roof of the neck on animals like camels, and it's actually done on the 10th day of the Muslim month of Dhul Hijjah, which is the 12th month of the Islamic calendar. So in their pilgrimage, they actually kill thousands of animals, and it's sacrificial slaughter, and they actually used to actually kill their female children at birth as well. So in seeing all these rituals, it stands to reason you have to ask, why would Allah need all of this blood? Why would he need the dead flesh of animals and blood? You know, why would you have all these holidays that there are blood running in the streets and the flesh and killing and slicing of animals' throats? This same Allah is a light fire God. There are numerous passages in the Quran that speaks to Allah saying it is okay to fight and kill human beings. And it's interesting to note that it is okay, according to the Quran, to eat certain animals, but not al-khinzir, or the hog, the swine, or the pig, just as the Israelites and Ishmaelites were instructed not to eat the pig. So it's interesting to see the parallels between the two, because you're really dealing with the same religion and the same feeding of the same gods. So Muslims, Islamism, Mohammedanism, by whatever sect or denomination, which is inclusive of that taken on by the new Negroids who converted to the Arabian religion and called themselves, whatever within it. They changed the teaching in order to suit themselves or their race. But still, it all goes back to, no matter what sect, that same Arabian prophet, born under the name Ahmed, known as Muhammad, that sought to appease these bloodthirsty gods. Being that Al-Quran actually was derived from the Jewish and Christian books, all of which are feeding these same gods under whichever name. So even if they claim that their God came in the flesh, like it was claimed by the Nation of Islam, still he came from Arabia and gave him that same book. So they're still adhering to the energies of feeding these same bloodthirsty gods as in traditional Islam or any of the other sects. This can also be said for the 5% Nation that also branches for them. This can also be said for the Moorish Science Temple, because the teachings are still rooted out of Arabia. So you're still dealing with feeding the same bloodthirsty gods as in so-called traditional Islam. Still asking them for blood, still asking them for flesh offerings. And this being is supposedly so powerful, why would they need the blood and the flesh offerings? To the point that this being even asked for human sacrifice, as in the case of Abraham's own son in Genesis 22. God, Allah, Alihat, by any name, still asks for a human sacrifice to cook a person as a burnt offering. And you can look at Genesis 8:21 through 22 and Genesis 9:3 through 6. So they ate human flesh and animals to this day. Just as people do to this day, these same bloodthirsty deities ate human flesh and animal flesh. So Palmanzal Nisdar, Amun Nabab Re Akhwata Zetwi Hu Kawen Harar, has spoken and spoke once again about what is actually done to beings that are seized for the harvest for the world. These bloodthirsty beings in the monotheistic religions promised the subjects of these religions that they would come back for them and take them up in a rapture. So they asked in their scriptures that blood offerings be given, to kill, to put flesh on altars, to show their devotion to this unseen God. And throughout time, even though these practices visually obviously did not continue to take place, those that are devoted to these religions still gave their energies to these bloodthirsty gods with the hope that they would come and rapture them or take them back up. And this happened as of 2000 AD. But again, as we said before, it didn't happen in the way that they expected. Beings were taken starting in 2003 in 2000, back up to their craft to prepare them for 2003 AD. When these beings are taken up in this rapture into the crafts, they have to be cleaned out. So just as when you are preparing any meat dish and you clean your chicken, get underneath the skin, or those who still eat pork and eat chitlins and they take the intestines of the pig and pick out the defecation or the trash or remnants and things that are in their bodies to eat, humanoids are prepared the same way. The bloodthirsty gods actually attempted to raise the beings on the earth on clean things in an attempt to have a healthier dish for their menu. However, even though they tried to raise them on clean things and try to prevent them from being diseased, did things to make them taste better and to make their flesh more tender, as found in the books of Leviticus, they still have to clean and tenderize their meat. So once beings are on the big crafts, they're bathed, they're shaven, there's a tube that's put into their mouths, a fluid is pumped in that fills their stomach, and their legs are hung over a machine, and a long tube is entered into their rectum to clean out all the fecal matter, everything out of their intestines, and then the beings the humans are repumped 3 times more with this liquid. There was a tube put in the penis of the male, or the vagina of the female, to remove the urine, to clean out the bladder and empty the bladder. And this is done 3 times to make sure that the inner body is cleansed of its filth. Now, please note in the description given, there's no description of anesthesia or that this whole process isn't being felt. Palmanzal Nisdar says, with this process, there is much pain felt. So then the cleansing process continues, or the blood is checked to see if it's clean after 6 weeks, because it takes the body 6 to 8 weeks to cleanse and cycle through the blood. All the teeth are removed, all the inner organs are removed, just as you would do with a chicken or turkey or fish or any other flesh someone would eat. Children are actually preferred because their flesh is more tender and they don't have the abuse to their bodies that many adults do by drinking or taking drugs. Children don't have that, so they're actually preferred. What's interesting is when people are encouraged to drink, by drinking alcohol, it actually thins the blood and pickles the organs. So in the preparation process, they continue to prepare the meat just as you would prepare meat to be cooked. And then the bodies are put in big vats and boiled. So this was done in a 3-year span from 2000 to 2003 AD. This is the process that was utilized. In addition to the humans, they were still eating household pets. They were still eating horses, livestock. So it's animals and humans. But mostly Paka'anu, or the Canaanites, were the ones being prepared for food. That was the white meat that they wanted. So these same bloodthirsty beings actually gave religion to make their flock, or Paka'anu, their cattle, their livestock, to live by, in order to make them trust in these Elohim, in these bloodthirsty beings. Many of the offspring of these beings who are on the planet still eat raw flesh and blood. You see many Celtics who are descendants of these beings, of the Pleiadians, where they'll eat a plate of meat that's so rare it's red with blood in the plate. That is a remnant of their genetics from being mixed beings, hybrids from the Pleiadians who also came down and mixed in with humanoids. These types of practices are actually hidden in their religions. Just as you look with Esau and Jacob and eating the red porridge, that's actually the consumption of blood. So as Pamanzal Nisdar Amun Babre Ahwata Zetwi Hu Kawan Harar has been telling us time and time again, and particularly in this day and time, we just need to stay away from them. We have to pull away and stay away from them, because so many of our people have become so much like them in appearance, dress, everything, really just taking on the image of the beast, that they're going to be included with the harvest for the world. These bloodthirsty beings will not touch African blood because of the protection provided by Panataru, Pasalafu, our ancestors, the overseers. Pamanzal Nisdar mentioned how whenever you see a Panagaru taken up or have any kind of incidents with extraterrestrials, those extraterrestrials, it's because they're closely related with a Canaanite or a Celtic, and he gave an example. There was a couple from Portsmouth, New Hampshire. It was a Negroid man and a Celtic woman, Betty and Barney Hill, and they were actually abducted in September of 1961 by beings from Zeta Reticuli, and it was called the Zeta Reticuli incident. This is because he was caught up in the Celtic world. So just as now in this day and time, that being caught up gets you on their radar, as been spoken of in previous updates. Pamanzal Nisdar posed the question, who is Azazel? He, of course, is the scapegoat. And he was supposed to be used to take on the sins of all the world. And he was cast in the wilderness as an atonement for the sins of the people. This goat was just another blood offering. So this is why Pamanzal Nisdar has told us we do not subscribe to the religions of Abraham, because these are bloodlust religions. You will attract the wrong type of God. This also extends to the bloodlust religions or offshoots such as Yoruba, which is an offshoot of Al-Islam. Even though it has an African appearance, it's still appeasing the bloodthirsty gods. Years ago, we received an update not to eat certain foods, such as cheese, bread, dark colas. And at that particular time, it was explained how they had begun adding blood to food as an additive. Because there were so many slaughterhouses that had blood waste, there were some scientists in Russia that tried to find a way to use it basically to make money. And Pamanzal Nisdar reiterated this affirmation. The doctor's name is actually female, is Dr. Ludmila Antipova. You can actually look her up on the internet. And she decided to find a way to use blood 12 years ago because she found out that a local meat plant had discarded up to 7 tons of this blood waste per day. 7 tons per day. So she used this to actually reproduce foods such as chocolate. That was the other one. Chocolate, they put it in bagels, they use it in ice cream, and they actually use it in coffee, just to name a few things. Also, sugar is processed using pig's blood. They use the pig's blood to refine white sugar. So all these beings know that the life is in the blood. And when people consume foreign blood, they can be controlled through the blood. So this is what's behind all these blood additives. If you do not have another's blood in you, they cannot control your spirit. So that's why they have their cattle, the Canaanite, eating blood, eating raw meat, and actually giving it a term. Instead of calling it raw, they call it rare or medium rare, but it's raw and less raw. But they make it normal so that people will ingest this blood so they can be controlled. Then, truth be told, Parmanzal Nisdar said, we still have not only Negroid people, but Nawapians who are eating blood red meat after we've received affirmation for years not to eat the blood red meat because of this issue of blood and control. We still have Negroids and Nawapians who are drinking, even though we were told about the dangers of intoxicants, which also connects to the blood, as was revealed when we received the genetic kiss doctrine. When someone drinks, they can fall, open a cut, and with that, septors can come in with the exposure of blood or bodily fluids. We still have Negroids and Nawapians who are smoking. These are all things that we were told many years ago not to do. And yet and still, we're standing here still bringing it forth that this is an issue amongst us. The bottom line, Parmanzal Nisdar said, if you are still engaging these things, you will be added to their lake of fire, also known as a barbecue. Many amongst us and amongst our people have mixed in with them so much, and we've taken on their bad habits of the smoking, of the drinking, of the consuming of the red meat, the music, the way of thinking, their whole life, and that will become your end or death. Many of our race will become their meals because they live their lives in the world of the Celtic. They mix their seed with them. So Parmanzal Nisdar also spoke about in the Bible how the Lord and the angels ate flesh. And it also says their offspring will eat it also. In Psalms 78:25, it reads, man did eat angels' food. He sent them meat to the full. Another biblical tale that relates to the harvest for the world is the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. They set out to kill people in Sodom and Gomorrah, and he said, yes, they did take them also as food. So they kill humans and they ate flesh. This same God gave Abraham a son through Sarah. And at the same time, in turn, he asked Abraham to kill that son and cook him. He asked him to be a burnt offering to cook for him. So that's the same thing as offering him basically as a plate of food to him. It all has to do with that sweet smelling savor. The gods, the Elohim, ate human flesh. So Parmanzal Nisdar, posed the question about, how do they like their meat? Just like when humans have a barbecue, they might have their meat, mesquited up a little bit or with this special sauce. It's the same thing that's going on with the food for the gods. When people smoke, when people drink, all they're doing is seasoning their bodies. Also, he puts forth how in the Bible, if a Christian were truly to follow the Bible, they're presented with a strict diet. And the reason for this strict diet of what to eat, what not to eat, what's clean, what's unclean, is the same methodology as having a farm-raised pig as opposed to a pig in the field. The Bible is trying to get them some farm-raised pigs to eat. It's trying to show them to eat the proper food so that they will be the best harvest. However, as most people do not follow their scripture and the scriptural laws to diet, they're just like, wild pigs to be harvested, but they'll be harvested nonetheless. If you noticed, there's a whole campaign about the other white meat, which we were taught was pork. The reality is the other white meat are the pigs of this planet, which are the albinos, the Kaanu. And if you notice, all they like to consume is meat with every meal. And they have a very bland diet. Christianity is basically for their people to be gathered like calves in the stall. There's a interesting quote in Revelation 14 through 20. And if you look at verse 15, it speaks of the harvest for the earth being ripe. So some of these beings are actually taking their meals just like as a restaurant where you can, go to the turkey farm and pick out which turkey you want to eat. They're doing the same thing with the Canaanite on this planet. They're watching and they're picking and they're taking it and they're eating it. It's been mentioned in previous updates and it was reiterated about an episode of The Twilight Zone called To Serve Man. It originally aired in 1962, and it's when extraterrestrials come to the planet Earth and they gain the trust of the humans only to eat them, only for humans to become food for the gods. This aired in the 60s, and now we're actually seeing it come to pass. Parmanzal Nasdar spoke of how in this world, nothing is what it seems, but at the same time, it's very clear. And this day and time, it's very clear why we need to pull back, give them back their stuff, as he's taught us for many, many, many years, that we cannot get caught up with them. All we have to do is get out of the way. The end for the Celtic, it's coming. The harvest is happening. All we have to do is just get out of the way. When you look at the Bible and Quran, this is the guidebook that Christians and Muslims utilize as the guidebook or the guide for their life. But it is a book that's filled with killing. It's filled with people getting, smiting, death, burning flesh. It sounds like something out of a old English novel. I mean, it's very gothic if you really look at it, but this is what someone uses to guide their whole life. It's a constant flood of blood throughout the stories of the book. There's always some mentioning of blood, and that is because they are appeasing these bloodthirsty draconians through their religions. Parmanzal Nasdar gave the example of the Bible sounding like something out of the Middle Ages. He used the example of the movie The Clash of the Titans, where you have the Krakon or the Draconian, the Draco or the dragon, was going to eat the king's daughter, Andromeda. Or, what about the story where the people in the town have to offer up their flock to some ogre to save themselves? It's the same type of stories that you see in the Bible. They offer up their flock so that the ogre won't come and destroy their town and kill all the inhabitants. It sounds strange, or it sounds fairy tale-ish when you see it in in a book or a legend or a folk tale, but when you look in the Bible, it's all the same thing. It's the same theme. So although the harvest of the world may sound shocking to people, when you really look into the scriptures, when you really look into the events with extraterrestrials on this planet, it's really been in our face all along. Throughout all our updates and classes and information about the harvest for the world, it's scripture after scripture after scripture that explicitly says and speaks of these beings eating flesh. But because of the spell of ignorance and the spell of amnesia, we've been taught not to see what is actually there. Through the pastor or the pasture, we've had scriptures reinterpreted so that we don't read what's actually on the page. So Pamanzal Nazdar challenges us, challenges Panagaru or the Negroids. When are we going to give them back everything that they've given us? When are we going to reject them? When are we going to do this? Because if we do not do this, we will become food for the gods. That's the bottom line. African, Negroid, Nawapian or not, we have got to give them back everything. That is what is at stake. Now, Pamanzal Nazdar Amunnababre Akhwata Zetwi Hu Kawan Harar reiterated again, we are not a nation, we are a tribe, Nuwapu or Nuwapians. Our nation is Africa, which he prefers to call Negro.
Need another reason to drive a fuel-efficient Edge? Now lease one for an incredible $199 a month. Just $199 a month. Only at your Tri-State Ford dealer.
Negroid land, because that's what it actually is. As he's taught us for years, when you deal with the etymology or the phonetics of Africa, you're dealing with al-faraka, which means to separate. It was originally called Afaf Reye Ka, or of Reye's spirit. Just as Minister Louis Farrakhan's name has that same root of faraka, meaning to separate and divide. That's the root of phonetics of the word Africa. So the preference is Negroid land. He also reiterated how the same bloodthirsty gods of Arabia penetrated Afaf Reye Ka to the Yoruba. Those bloodlust gods are called the Orisha in that culture. So again, Pamanzal Nazdar calls Africa Negroid land. And as its inhabitants, we would be Panagaru or Negroids. And he reiterated how the word nigger or Negro doesn't mean a thing, because you see that same word in the Bible in Acts 13:1 as Simon the nigger, who's a prophet and a teacher. Spelled Niger. And when you look at the Greek Strong's number, it's 3526, pronounced Niger, Niger, but it means black and it's taken from the Latin, but still is referring to a Negroid. He also points out that Antioch, which is spoken in Acts 13:1. The quote actually reads, "Now there were in the church that was at Antioch," which is actually the country known now as Turkey, "certain prophets and teachers as Barnabas and Simeon, that was called Niger." So right there in the Bible, when you look at Antioch, that's actually a Muslim country, and that's the first place that the name of a Christian was ever used. So it's clear that Simon was the one who helped to name the new Jewish sect Christians, or those who followed a man by the name of Christ. Now, being that they were speaking not Greek, but Galatian of Galilee, that's what they were, really called before the Bible was translated to Latin and then Greek. Followers of a Messiah or a Mashiach or a Masih is all a play on words. Parmanzal Nisdar says in time, they will regard Ka'anu, or those called Canaanites, as just as bad as being called nigger, because people relate the mark on Cain of Genesis as albinoism and the curse of Canaan as leprosy. And then look in their Bible in Leviticus chapter 13 and other places, they will see the curse of Canaan, 9:25, as their own race, and they won't like it, but it's a little too late for that now. The rapture, or raptors, have come for their supper of the lambs, or as the Anunnaki called them, the Lulu Amilu, the primitive worker. So the reality is, sad for them, the Celtic was always bred for food, be it B-R-E-D or B-E-B-R-E-A-D. Again, just as they bred the wild boar to the domestic pink pig, they were grafted to create the Homo simian, and you can see it in their face and their ears. Also, they were born and bred with the canine to create the Homo canine, and you can actually see the remnants of this by the fact that many of the Kaanu have body fur and the canine teeth and that thirst for blood that canines have. And they also, many of them have mange, which is a skin condition. They were also bred with the sow, known as the Homo sow, and you can actually see this in their skin color, many of them having a pink pig color, the nose, many of them having the nose shape of a pig, and also many of them have arms that are disproportionately short to their bodies, and that is actually a remnant of breeding with the pig. Also, a reflection of the breeding with the bloodthirsty beings is the fact that Paka'anu drink a lot of beer, coffee, smoke tobacco, all that coming from being mixed with the bloodlusting reptilians who eat flesh. So now they know their Messiah, who we actually know to be the anointed cherub known as Shezmu, and Emhe. And Emhe actually bred the Canaanite, just as the Canaanites bred the boar to the pig as the best one to eat. The masters of the Canaanites did the same thing with them and bred them in, as albinos. The Canaanite thought they knew who their Jesus was, but they didn't know. And it's interesting, in the Bible, they tell Moses that if he were to have his people look on the gods, they would have to die. Parmanzal Nisdar said once those people saw the gods, the Allah, the Allats, they actually killed themselves once they realized they worshipped reptilian beasts who eat human flesh. In the Quran, it speaks about how the Ka'anu lived in caves with dogs. And it also speaks of how they changed them into swine and apes. And they were grafted with swine, dogs, and monkeys. The Homo porcine is the mix with the pigs, the Homo canine being the mix with the dogs, and the Homo simian being the mix with the monkeys. And all those mixtures are in the DNA of the Ka'anu now. So Parmanzal Nisdar tells us to respect them. Respect them, as in R-E-S-P-E-C. Look at them again, and you can see it. You can see the results of this being bred with all these different creatures. You see the fur for hair, you see the fangs for teeth, you see the snout for the nose, and you see the size of their ears. He tells us to respect them closer. And to this day, Pakakasu eat monkey meat, they eat pig meat, they eat dog meat. And in Europe, this was actually ordered for them to do, because by ingesting all these types of meats, they would be able to utilize the body parts of the pig and the monkey and the dog. Because they could ingest their meats and ingest their DNA, it would make it so when the parts of the pig or the monkey or the dog were used for their bodies, they wouldn't reject them. Parmanzan Nasdar again mentions watching the cinema The Fourth Kind. And you could see what those the people in Nome, Alaska saw, because it is partly dramatized, but it's partly a documentary of what happened from the years 2000 to 2003. And when you look back on what Parmanzan has taught us years and years ago, back Supreme Mathematics Series and beyond, he already taught us about the vats with the grays sucking out the fluids with vats of bodies sucking up the fluids. You know, so all these things that you're seeing come to pass now, Parmanzan Nasdar has been teaching us. We just didn't have all the puzzle pieces to fit to see the full picture, and he had to bring us up in outformation and transformation so we would even be willing and able to receive the reality of what's going on in this planet. He speaks about the grays who collect the food, who eat out the vats, who absorb the nutrients through their skin because they don't have any digestive organs or reproductive organs. So he's already presented all of this to us. And with the vats of bodies, one element that we didn't mention in the seasoning of the bodies, when we were first introduced to this affirmation, it was spoken of how fear is propagated in order to get the body to secrete adrenaline, because this also seasons the meat. Even in using fear religions, that's the biggest pusher of fear. Fear in horror movies, even the high-pitched music and screams utilized by Pakakasu are all used to stimulate fear in bodies. Not just our bodies, but now we're realizing all bodies that they are using to harvest from this planet to feed their bloodthirsty gods. So adrenaline is used to season the body, and they use the Bible and Quran to say, fear God, fear Allah, fear fire and brimstone, to season thousands of people every week in the church, on the television, in the mosque, in order to prep these bodies for the bloodthirsty gods. Parmanzan Nasdar spoke about how in the book Man of Many Faces, which gives an excellent account of the case, the author actually states that he didn't understand why Parmanzan Nasdar said that the Anunnaki were returning in 2000 AD, and they did not. But though we respect the author's work on the master teacher's behalf, he was wrong. They did return. The Anunnaki did return at that time. And he even spoke of how the corrupt county sheriff of Putnam County, Howard Richard Sills, who was an integral part in the plot to frame our master teacher for crimes that he did not commit, he saw crafts over our stolen land, Ptah-Meireh, Egypt of the West, which was located 404 Shadydale Road in Eatonton, Georgia. Sills and many other Caucasus residents of that area saw the crafts over the land. There was even a television special that came on where there was a Celtic who lived close to the land who said he saw the crafts. So these same people who came up against our master teacher and defamed our tribe for many years, they know what the master teacher was saying was correct, but they were a part of hiding the reality of extraterrestrials on this planet. So those crafts that they saw were not coming for us. They were coming for the chosen people. And the chosen people spoken of the Bible are those that were chosen and bred by the Pleiadians and by the Draconians to be taken up as food. But again, we know who the chosen ones are. They're chosen ones. Not speaking of children of Panataru, but the chosen ones of the Bible and the Quran and the monotheistic religions. However, we have Negroids, again, living in the image and mixing blood with these beings who are being bred for food. And if they are not transformed, they will be left for food as well. It's important that people need to know that the Caucasoid race has been deceived by the very God and Allah that they worship, that they have worshiped for 6,000 years, that already came for the rapture in 2000, which was the end of the rule of the Hekakasutu Pakakasu after 6,000 years. As our ancestors, Panataru, look on, their ancestors and their gods, Anunnaki, came and the rapture actually happened. And it was a harvest. And it was spoken of in Revelation 14:15 and Joel 3:13 through 15. And just to read a quote, because it's right there. Put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come, get you down, for the press is full. The vats overflow, for their wickedness is great. So right now, with the coming of this affirmation, many of these Kakasu are in shock right now. They don't know what to do, and many of them don't even know what happened now. And that is why the owl is on the back of the $1 bill, the wise old owl. Right now, they are hiding as one race under many names. All of them are Celtic. All of them are Wiccan. They return to Pleiades. Their end has come and gone, and now they are fading out of existence. They are just finding out that they are food for their gods who need blood offerings and sacrifices. As you read in Genesis 4:4 and Genesis 8:21, who taught the Hebrews and the Israelites to eat flesh, then human flesh? And you can look in 2 Kings 6:28 through 29, Leviticus 26:29, Deuteronomy 28:53, Lamentations 4:10, and Ezekiel 5:10. And note that Ezekiel 1 is the chapter about a craft landing. Their Messiah came in 2000 and took many in the name of Allah, Jah, Adonai, El Shaddai, Elohim, Elion, Rab, Lord, Hashem, El, Elah, or Alihat. Whatever name they may use, it's all the cherubim. So when you look in Leviticus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, it'll show where these gods eat an offering. In Genesis 22:2, God asked Abraham to offer, cook, and prepare a burnt offering of flesh. And we keep reiterating these because Pamanzan Nisdar wants us to see it. Now that our mind is clear to see it, he needs us to see it. In the Bible, God was going to eat Abraham's son. He replaced him with a ram. But it's right there in front of us. It's right there in front of them. So, as we bring this to a close, Pamanzan Nisdar posed the question of why? And he brings up Genesis 3:15. And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. And then he pulls us back to Genesis 3:14. And the Lord God said unto the serpent, because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all cattle, and above every beast of the field. Upon thy belly shalt thou go, and dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life. So, what will the serpent eat? Dust. Then he pulls us to Genesis 3:19. In the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat bread, till thou return unto the ground, for out of it wast thou taken, for dust thou art, and unto dust shalt thou return. So according to this scripture, what are Adam and Eve made of? Dust. So what and who will they eat? It's right there in those verses of Genesis. It's spoken of in the Bible in Malachi 4:5, the great and what? Dreadful day of the Lord. And why is it dreadful? Because they will dread ever worshiping these gods once they see they're on the menu or menu. So with that, we're going to bring this evening's class to a close. Again, of course, we encourage the family to please stay focused on love and unity for the freedom of the master teacher, His Excellency, Dr. Malachi York. Continue chanting at 9-3 and 9. Continue all avenues for his freedom. Continue supporting those who are working on behalf of the master teacher, directly or indirectly. And of course, please join us every shadow for Patarak, the way, with the Supreme Grand Council of 24 Elders, another means of bringing us together as a tribe and transforming us as we work and labor to free our master teacher. Pa manzal nisdar amun babre ach patazetwi hu kawan harar wada'u.